Welcome to Unstoppable Faith with Dr. Kazumba Charles. This program is designed to inspire you to stand on the Word of God and to help you build unshakable and unstoppable faith in Jesus Christ. Here's your host, Dr. Kazumba.
So today we're going to be looking at food triggers, and I have a very special guest. She's going to be joining me on this program today. Leah, she's the author of Food Triggers, Exchanging Unhealthy Patterns for God-Honoring Habits. I love that. And she is also a certified health coach, a former college athlete, and a recreational bodybuilder. Stay tuned and we'll be right back with my guest on today's program. You are called to be unstoppable for God. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. Leah, welcome to Unstoppable Faith.
I'm delighted to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
I am so happy just as I was going through your book, you write so many good stuff in there, and I love it. Exchanging unhealthy patterns for God-honoring habits. I love that. Now, I want to start right here. What inspired you to write the book of Food Triggers?
It's an excellent question, and everything that I write comes from a very personal journey. So for me, I started out as a mom with 3 little boys living in a location where I didn't have a lot of friends, a lot of community. My husband had moved us to a new town. And that was really the start of a spiral for me of really coming to a place where I was angry. I felt like I was isolated. I was lonely. And in the middle of a lot of those mismanaged emotions, I started to use food to fill a void that could not be filled by food. And when I started to examine my life, I realized I wasn't living life to the full as God designed for me, that I needed to have him help me work through my anger triggers and to become a more gentle biblical parent, and then eventually to also get back on track with my health journey. And so step by step, little by little, as I leaned in to the Lord, he helped me transform and gave me freedom from a lot of these triggers. And so short story, 3 years ago, I was experiencing some health concerns medically that I knew basically if I didn't get a handle on it, it wasn't going to get better. But I also realized that I was that mom that was tired all the time. I couldn't go out with my kids and jump in the trampoline like they wanted me to. And I looked at the trajectory of my future and I realized that if I didn't make a change in my health journey, that nothing was going to change. And so I found a plan that would be simple for me to follow in my busy lifestyle. And then I just began to dig in with the Lord and ask him, what's the root of these issues for me with my eating? Why am I turning to food and not to you? And he was able to help me work on my mindset and my spiritual growth. And I released 85 pounds. I've kept it off for over 3 years now, and it's been life-changing for me. And now I want to pay that forward and let other people know it doesn't have to be complicated, and we don't have to stay stuck or be trapped by any trigger in our life, that we are overcomers and that we can have victory.
Wow. So you're saying certain things that goes on in our lives can trigger not only just food. For example, in your case, it triggered your habits of eating certain food. Can you just share, because that is very important? Because as we come to the spiritual aspect as well, there are so many things that, sets these triggers either for us to go back to where we used to be. But I just want you to right there, just lean in on that and share why is it that we have these triggers that either gets you, in your case, to eating certain food or to just love food, which was unhealthy for you. Just touch on that a little bit for us.
So 3 years ago, I had just celebrated my 4th son's 2nd birthday party. And I realized that this just wasn't baby weight. This wasn't weight I had gained just from having the baby. I had gotten into some unhealthy patterns. And for me, honestly, I realized that I was pouring out my life with my family, with my work, with my ministry, and I was not actually taking care of my temple that God had given to me. But the root of it was a lot of emotional mismanagement. So I came to discover that I would get through the day, I would work hard, I was drained, I was homeschooling my 4 sons, I was working from home. And then by the time evening came, I was exhausted. And I would put my little boys to bed, and then I would sit on the couch and I would have ice cream. So I had a sugar addiction, and that was my routine for several years in a row. And I honestly didn't think I would be able to break that pattern in my life. And so I started to make a few practical changes, first of all, which led to the root issue, emotionally and spiritually, what was going on. First of all, every time I opened the freezer to go for that ice cream, I said, Amber, what you're looking for is not in the ice cream carton. It's not in your refrigerator. It's not in the pantry. That is not where you're going to find relief. See, I realized I was seeking a temporary pleasure that was in place of a long-term satisfaction that I was really looking for. And so I had to go back and say, Amber, the reason you're so tired, the reason you're trying to get this momentary pleasure is because you're not actually living out your full purpose in your life. You're doing everything in your own effort, and you haven't really grieved some losses that you've had. I had had a miscarriage of twins several years before, and I had not had the time to even do a lot of my own processing and grieving through that. I was just pulling myself up by my bootstraps every day. And so when I took the time, I said, I've got to start taking time to process these emotions, to get in the Word of God, to be in prayer and allow Him to heal my heart and my mind, and to stop turning to that temporary thing. So I just put a sign on my kitchen that said, kitchen's closed. After dinner, kitchen's closed, right? I brushed my teeth so that I would remind myself, break that pattern, Amber. What you're seeking is not in the ice cream carton. It's with the Lord. So brush your teeth and spend some time with Him. And little by little, practically and spiritually, I began to examine what those triggers were for me and how to really get to the root of them so that I could have victory in this area.
Wow, that is just powerful. I like that because you see, you are a former college athlete, so you know when your body is not right there. I'm a former, football player, soccer player, you may call it. So I know that, and I know the struggle that leads to when you are unhealthy physically, you will tend to be unhealthy spiritually because you won't have the energy to drive. Is that true?
It is true. And we are not separate from our bodies, right? Our mind, our body, and our spirit, they are all together. And God designed us that way. So if something is off with me physically, then it's going to impact me spiritually. When I was addicted to sugar, okay, so what that was doing was also creating this physiological impact in my body. So I would have these big emotions. I'd have mood swings. If people are struggling with mood swings, and we've got these sugar issues going on, it's this cortisol dopamine loop in our bodies, these cravings. Well, guess what? That impacted my relationships with my children and with my husband, because when I'm not stable emotionally, that spiritual battle becomes even more challenging. So they complement one another. Our triggers, they're really supposed to be opportunities. Whatever our triggers are, whether it's trigger toward anger, trigger towards food, we look at these triggers as obstacles and as problems and the things that are tripping us up and causing us to fail. When really I want us to shift and start thinking that these triggers are actually opportunities. It's an opportunity for you to examine where you at spiritually. What is the hole that I'm trying to fill? Why am I so angry? What is the root of that? Is it disappointment? Is it loneliness? And then we can either keep turning to the food, or we can turn to God. We can start to step into the purpose that He has for us and then put food back in its rightful place.
Wow, wow. This is just awesome. I want to go to this question I have for you here. What encouragement do you have, for fellow Christians who struggle with the thought that if they were Christian enough or hold it together spiritually, that they wouldn't struggle with food so much?
This is so dear to my heart, this issue, because we are so good at shaming ourselves. We're so good at condemning ourselves. We're so good at listening to the enemy instead of our friend, which is Jesus. And the enemy will try to tell us that we're failures. He will try to tell us that we keep failing. We're never going to have victory in this area of our lives. He will try to tell us that just we're too weak. Other people can have victory, but not you. You can't have victory. And those are lies. You see, it's possible to be even in a good place spiritually, but not to be perfect. We're not meant to be perfect. This is a journey. We're being perfected by Christ. That's the whole point. And so 2 Corinthians 12:9 talks about that when we are weak, right, then that's when Christ's power rests on us. We actually can believe that God's grace is sufficient for us, that it's his power that's going to make us perfect in our weakness. So when we're weak, that's literally setting us up to move into a place of authority and empowerment and victory, because it's not about us. The spiritual journey we're on is not about us. None of it is about us. It boils down to how willing are we to yield our lives to God, to enter into our lives and help us have victory. But it is not about being perfect. It's going to take some time and some growth, just like any good thing does.
I like just the point that you just made there. It depends on how willing are we able to commit our lives to God, which brings me to this question. I needed to jump in because, everyone that truly wants to experience transformation has to commit to a certain process. It's a process. It's not something that we arrive. Having talked about the process, I remember when I started exercising after, the 2-year pandemic, I had all the excuses not to run. And then my body started failing me. And then I said, no, I'm going to go there. So one day, Amber, I started running. I thought I could run that day to lose my whole weight that day. That's what I thought. And then my goodness, when I finished, my whole body was aching. I couldn't even go out there again. My whole body couldn't handle it because I forgot that word, the process. It's a process. I have to start step by step. So here is my question to you. I want you to talk to us about the importance of knowing your why and keeping it in mind on our healthy journey. Talk to us about that.
Yes. So your why is that motivation initially to even just take that first step like you took, right? Like to be like, okay, today's the day I decide I'm going to put my running shoes on and I'm going to make some effort. I'm going to make some changes. But it's the why that we must keep front and center in our lives as we're trying to make some of these changes. So for example, my why when I started to go on this health journey was my 4 sons. I knew that whatever I was doing, right, they were watching. And I didn't want to pass down a generation of issues with food with my children. So that was important to me. My second why was that I did feel some godly conviction that I wasn't taking care of this temple that I had in the way that I should be. But I also knew that God designed me as an overcomer, right? Jesus is an overcomer. And if we're going to be like Jesus, we're going to be overcomers. And I was tired of not being an overcomer anymore. And that was a big why for me, because I looked at the future and I realized I was either going to head toward the nursing home or the cruise ship. And I wanted to be on the cruise ship with my grandchildren. I didn't want to be stuck. I realized that why, and I'll be honest, I didn't feel good. I just didn't feel good. I was tired of sitting down and having, these rolls of fat, rub against the armchair, that I was sitting and I couldn't get comfortable. I hated that feeling. I wasn't sleeping well. So then I wasn't rested. It was just this ripple effect. And so all of those things were different whys for me. And I think it's very important to spend a few minutes, even today, those of you that are watching and listening, to write down what is your why. And then I use an acronym for the word why. The W stands for when, the H stands for hindrances, and the Y stands for yield. When hindrances yield. If your why is front and center, there's no hindrance, there's no trigger, there's no obstacle, there's no temptation that's going to stop you, that's going to cause you to get off of this track that you're on. Again, this is not about perfection. This is about yielding to the process. Because here's the other thing to remember. The challenge is going to come. The trigger is going to come. You may still indulge in something, that you said you weren't going to eat. But what's so critical to know is that one meal, all right, one vacation where you overindulge is not going to erase an entire healthy lifestyle, right? We got to start being mindful that we're in this for the long haul. We got our whole lives ahead of us to live. We're not going to let one meal, one misstep stop us. And just to share one last thing about this topic, when my boys were learning how to walk, all right, they would get up and they would fall back down, and they'd take a few steps and they'd stumble and they would crash. Sometimes they'd even get a bruise or two, right? But not once did they say, oh, no, I messed up. I fell again. I'm not going to keep going toward this goal of walking and running and skipping and playing for the rest of my life. It would be really nonsensical to say, well, I tried to walk and it didn't work out those first few times or that first 3 months. And so now I'm just going to quit and I'm going to sit in this chair for the rest of my life. We would be missing out on all that God has for us. So we have to get into a place where when we're considering our health journey, we're no longer easily defeated. We got to keep going. It's going to have its ups and downs. We're going to fall sometimes. That's okay. We got the next 5 years of our lives, 10 years of our lives, 20 years of our lives to keep going in the right direction, and it will be worth it.
Wow, I just love this. I love this, Amber. You share something very important on why. You break down that why, and you use why, the letter Y in the why there as when, and then H. Indra says why heals. So when Indra says heals, I like that because that is a commitment that we all have to make if we want to see those changes and overcome those triggers. Now I want to go to this because your book right in my back there, and you can see it on the screen, our viewers around the world. In the book is broken down into 31 chapters, each addressing a specific trigger, a spiritual truth to encounter that trigger, and closing with a prayer. Can you give us an example of what a trigger plus spiritual truth combination might be?
Definitely. So, again, it's one thing to be on a diet, right? And to eat certain foods or stop eating certain foods, or to simply say, I'm going to build muscle, I'm going to start running, I'm going to get an exercise program in place. It's one thing to do that. But if we don't apply the spiritual part of this through the journey, then we're really missing out on all that God has for us. So, for example, one thing that I recognize is that it's one thing to have a malnourished body. It's a whole nother thing to have a malnourished soul. And if we don't get to the root of these issues, we're not going to last on the health journey, right? If the mindset piece, if the spiritual piece is not applied to the practical, then we probably won't last very long with the practical, because the spiritual is the root of it. So, for example, I think one of the things that most of us struggle with the most is the trigger of our emotions. We feed our emotions. And our emotions, when we start letting them overtake us and overpower us, we become people that are not living life to the full. And we become people who are easily defeated. And so what we have to understand is that our emotions were designed to serve us, not enslave us. And 1 Thessalonians 5:21 says to test everything and hold fast to what is good. Test everything. Test your emotions. When I head towards that freezer for the ice cream, I need to apply that spiritual truth. If I just wrote that one verse out and memorized it for a month, and that was my verse every day that I focused on, Amber, test everything today. Don't let your emotions get the best of you. When you're tired at the end of the day and you want to just crash, test that emotion and say, no, you can keep going. You can persevere. Hold fast to what is good. It's good to persevere on this health journey, not to go in, give in, and dig into the food, but to really lean in spiritually in that. That's what's going to give you lasting transformation. Because ultimately, at the end of the day, it's not about how we look. It's not even about how we feel. It's about what are we doing with every breath, with everything that we do to honor God. Because it says whatever we do, whether we eat or drink, everything that we do can give glory to God. And so that's the journey. That your health journey is simply a tool to help you grow spiritually and to be more like Christ.
Wow. Now, you talk about the health journey there. Again, going back to that word, the process. So this is a process. This is not something that, you're going to change right away. As Amber said, you have to make something as a memorial to remind you, I'm not going back here. I'm not going into that freezer. I just want you, most of the times, this eating is like an habit. There are certain times you just want to eat, even when you don't need to eat, because it has become like an habit. How do we break away from our unhealthy habits?
Yeah. So I want to give some encouragement here, because some people are getting overwhelmed. When they start thinking about their health journey, they think, this is overwhelming. I don't even know where to begin. And so how do I change all these unhealthy patterns and exchange them for these God-honoring habits? And so one thing I want to encourage people is there's just a few things you can do very simply that are going to make a big difference. This doesn't have to be hard. Sometimes we overcomplicate things because of what's in our mindset. So the first thing I want to share is that all of us, even starting today, can work on our hydration. I actually drink several of these every day. So we want to try to get at least 8-ounce glasses of water. So like 64 ounces of water every day. I drink several of these. They're right here next to me all the time. Water is so critical, not only for weight loss, but for your organ function, for your skin. It is a very, very powerful tool to help us to really make a big head start on our health journey. This second habit that's a super healthy one that we can start putting in place is protecting our sleep. Getting at least 7 hours of sleep every night to the best of our ability. I know some people are going to have interruptions or whatever, but if we start at least protecting 7 hours of sleep, we're going to affect our weight loss, but all kinds of other, our cognitive thinking. There's many studies about the benefits of healthy sleep. It's not always just about food. It's even just the water and the sleep. And I'll tell you, I struggled with this because I wasn't getting 7 hours of sleep at night when I started my health journey. And I realized, I was really good at tucking my kids into bed and putting them to bed and setting a bedtime for them. But I wasn't doing that for myself. I was watching TV or getting distracted, and I just would stay up too late. And I just said, Amber, no one's going to come and tuck you into bed. You got to tuck yourself into bed. So go put yourself to bed, girlfriend, and protect that. It starts with a decision, but it doesn't have to be overwhelming. If we just put those two healthy habits in place starting today, we'd be already starting our health journey, and that's not too hard.
Wow, I like that. Now, Amber, I am a practical guy. I love practical. And, in your book, you examine both the internal and the external food triggers. Can you give us an example of what a few of each might be and some practical steps to combat them?
Yes, great question. So there are going to be different kinds of triggers in our lives with food triggers. We're going to have the external triggers. We're going to have internal triggers. External triggers are things like traveling, holidays, being in community and everybody cooking for you, and feeling like you don't have much control. And then there are internal triggers. These are things like eating because we're lonely, eating because we're bored, eating because we feel very stressed in our lives. So with the external triggers, like one that's very super helpful and practical, one of the external triggers that I think is foundational is portion control, portion sizes. Our portions are way too big globally. Globally, we have an issue with eating too much. And so one practical thing that I did was I just started looking at a package. What is a serving size? Because what I would do is we'd open up a bag of chips and we'd just reach right inside and eat from the bag. And we had no idea of how much we were consuming. And I had to switch my mindset and remind myself, Amber, you're not a consumer. You're not just consuming food. You're fueling your body. So if you're going to fuel your body, then you need to look at what a serving size is and not just become a consumer who reaches in and takes something out and eats it without even thinking. So even my children now, when I give them something to eat, they don't just reach inside for it. They wait for their little bowl, right? To know what to put in that. They will always take something out and put it in a bowl. They know to have portion control. And this is not something we have to be obsessed over. We just need to reset our focus sometimes. Not like we're going to have to be using a measuring spoon the rest of our lives necessarily, because we'll get into a rhythm where we know how much we need to be eating. But just the process of looking what our portions are, that's going to have a tremendous impact on our health journey. If we just start having some mindfulness about that and awareness. And then on the internal trigger side, I think one of the biggest obstacles for many of us is we aren't feeling fulfilled in our lives. And so we're bored. We just eat out of boredom. It just becomes this mindless pattern that we have. And 1 Corinthians 10:31, I touched on this earlier, says, everything I do, whether I eat or drink, can be to the glory of God. And so we might be thinking, I don't know what my purpose is. I'm just kind of doing a job, or I'm just kind of existing, or I don't feel really fulfilled. And I think that's a warning sign that we need to start getting our joy back. We got to find our purpose. And it doesn't mean we have to be the president of some big company. I love being a stay-at-home mom. And those mundane routines, when I do them to the glory of God, they become very fulfilling in my life. So the problem is that we all have an instinctive desire to live life to the full, and it cannot lie dormant. God designed us to not be people of complacency. And so that desire to live life to the full, because it won't lie dormant, it will always find a manner in which to present itself. It will present itself in some way. And sometimes it will present itself in our purpose. We will step into what our God-given purpose is. But sometimes it will present itself by picking a poison. And so we either have to pick your poison or find your purpose. For me, I was so unfulfilled, I was picking my poison. Sugar, ice cream at night. I was just getting the temporary pleasure instead of the long-term satisfaction of realizing what my purpose was in my life again and not wasting my life anymore. So those are some examples.
Wow. I love that. Keep your poison. Oh, do what? Pick your purpose?
Or you find your purpose.
Or you find your purpose. What a powerful pointer right there. I know, Amber, we're running out of time here, but I have one question here that I want us to address because, again, I'm a practical guy, and I know our viewers around the world that are watching right now, they've listened to you. They're saying, how do I start? Because starting is one of the most difficult things in any situation in life. It is the most difficult situation. So for those listeners who wants to get healthier, listening to us right now, but they don't know where to start, what are some of the simple, practical changes they can begin to incorporate into their routine? You've touched on already on some of them, the way you deal with your kids. They got, a small bowl and they put those food in there. But I just want you to expand a little bit before we go. Yeah. How do they begin? Where do they begin from?
So one other practical tip that I have is to really lean in and find your people, to jump into community of some sort, whether you have a sister or a colleague or a spouse or a child that you think also would benefit from getting healthy with you. Don't do it alone if you don't have to. Enlist somebody to be a support system with you. Maybe it's even a health coach or a nutritionist or a workout partner, right? That you know is going to show up at the gym. And so there's that accountability there. But having that accountability and that community, don't underestimate it. Culturally in the US, more than 70% of Americans are overweight or obese. So pretty much everywhere you go, the majority of people are not going to be pursuing a healthy lifestyle. So you need to find somebody, because the people you're with, they're going to have an impact on you. Get some support in that process of getting healthy and some accountability. I think that's a very practical tool that we often underestimate. And there are, of course, many, many other tips in the book and Food Triggers and on my website at amberleah.com. There's some resources there, some free resources and things that people can use as well. But I really believe that if we watch those portions, if we start hydrating more, if we're getting good sleep, if we make a decision and we find our little, our people that are going to help support us, it's going to have a radical impact on our health journey.
Oh, wow. And that would be very helpful for us as we live a healthy life, pursuing the kingdom of God, pursuing God. I like this topic because last year, as you all know, I was a former soccer player, but I became dormant. And last year, I started working out as well as eating healthy and watching over myself as I'm busy doing the work of God. I needed my body to be there. So you are there, you saying, hey, Amber, I like everything you've shared. You've seen the website, our website on there. You can go there for more information. But you are there, you say, Amber, I just want to get in touch with you. Amber, where can they go to get in touch with you again and to connect with you on social media platforms?
Sure. So my name is Amber Leah. The last name is Lia, and you can find me on Instagram and on Facebook, The Real Amber Leah. And then my website has many resources dealing with parenting, marriage, this health journey, and that's amberleah.com.
amberleah.com. What an honor and a blessing to have you on Unstoppable Faith.
Thank you so much. It's been a joy to be here, and I hope that your viewers will come away feeling encouraged and empowered and full of hope.
And obviously, just a quick one here. I know your book is available where books are sold. Do you have a specific place where you would love the people to get a copy of Food Triggers?
Not necessarily, but it is available everywhere books are sold. But obviously, when people leave reviews, that's very helpful too. So if anybody feels led to do that, wherever you purchase your book, that would also be a blessing.
And I encourage you to do that, to get that copy of your book as you embark on the journey to transform both your physical and your spiritual life. I hope you've been blessed by these two series I've done on dealing with the triggers, also emotion triggers as well as food triggers. Our goal here is to help you be unstoppable. Have a faith that is unstoppable. Don't let your body fail you to do what God has called you to do. I hope you've been blessed by Amber Leah here. I encourage you to go and get that copy, read it, and begin to pursue the purposes God created you for. Until then, God bless you. Hey, before I go, also tune in again on Wednesdays as I bring you Kingdom Insight, where we teach the Word of God in context. We have heard a lot of testimonies and we are so thankful for you. Until then, shalom, shalom. God bless you.
Faith is the currency of the kingdom of God. Thank you for tuning in to Unstoppable Faith with Dr. Kazumba Charles. If this program has been a blessing to you, write to us at life@kazumbacharles.com and share your testimony.